Hi there, and welcome to this month's edition of Real Estate Matters with Clare Girton and myself, Ayse Clay. This is a show about matters in real estate, that real estate matters, and how real estate affects us and our local neighborhoods. For some, real estate is the largest investment. Both Clare and I are residential realtors focused right here on the main line and surrounding areas. And right now we're in some really interesting times in the real estate market. And what we aim to bring you is actual stories, scenarios, and some terms that may assist in the understanding of residential real estate, and perhaps a bit of humor as well.
This is really fun, Ayse, to be here with you doing this because we're learning every day, aren't we?
Sometimes, yes.
And right now, something that's really come up almost in every transaction is some of these, the properties that are selling over market price, over asking, 20, 30,000.
It seems to be more of the norm.
It does seem the norm, right? Things hitting on the weekend and are gone by the end of the weekend. And also with that comes this appraisal difference. So you're seeing that with your transactions as well, right?
We sure are.
So today, I think it's going to be fun. We're going to dive into a couple stories, a couple things that's happened to us in real time. I know you have a really good story, something that happened to you recently, a transaction. So I'm looking forward to kind of get into that with you.
Okay, awesome. I am too.
Okay.
And I can imagine that we're not the only ones, with similar stories. But I think for consumers, maybe that might be a surprise to them. So we're looking to maybe share that and break that down a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So the story I wanted to share was, it's regarding an appraisal in today's market. And the home's list price was $619,900, and I guess for easiest sake, we'll call it
$620.
$620, yes.
So this happened in the last couple months?
Yes.
So it's
exactly.
a pretty current sale?
Pretty current.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty current happening, which
Okay.
is great because this market is not how the market always is, right? We're calling this a very seller-handed or a market.
Seller's market.
Exactly. It could be an even seller-buyer market, and then it could be a buyer market. But right now, seller's market. They have the upper hand, I'll say. So this home was, I'll say, somewhat ordinary in regards. It was a raised ranch home on a beautiful, picturesque 1-acre lot, about 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, walkout basement, which was lovely daylight, so it had a lot of sun coming through. The lot was rather private, kind of a long winding driveway and some arborvitaes in the back. Nice private street, like a horseshoe street. And in the home, main floor living mostly. You didn't really need to go to the lower level for much, but there was some ancillary spaces there that one was already set up for a home office, which as we know now, so many people are still working from home. So those, I think, spaces helped speak to some of the buyers who had come through.
So I'm picturing this space in the back of the house where you could have a private office, and at the same time, if you wanted to leave your office work, and then you could have some privacy for entertaining as well. So it sounds like that probably was a real wow factor for this ordinary, if you will, property. And
sure.
Just a quick question now that we're talking, how long had the sellers been in it, and why were they looking to sell?
Oh, I love that question. So these homeowners were there for about 6 years.
Okay.
They had
not long.
They had 2 younger children, but with COVID, both of their jobs were now able to be done remotely. And they had a second home in a beach area, and they said, seize the day, we are heading to our beach home
for permanently. That's okay. Interesting.
Move the kids, the children, for schooling.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was fascinating. I think another piece that I left out, where there was also some other exterior areas in the home, 3 patios, which was really cool to have. And so throughout COVID, we've noticed that not only people are looking for more interior square footage because of more of that work from home space, or for some still schooling from home. People are also looking for that exterior space because, well, at least then you really couldn't go many places.
Right.
So I think that was a great attribute to this particular home.
So it was a bit of a surprise when they called you and said, will you come and list our house?
Yeah, pleasant surprise, of course.
Right, yes.
And so from there, you know, I speak to them about the property, about their thoughts around moving, and was able to ascertain that, you know, the highest sale in that area or that municipality for a similar type home, similar square footage, similar lot size was somewhere around $590,000.
Wow.
That was more of the outlier than the norm.
So at 620, you were already starting at a place that was above market according to the data.
For certain.
Okay.
And so there was a little bit of ambivalence. However, at the end of the day, the home seller will set the price and we then interpret the feedback. The feedback being an offer or no offer.
Yeah, let's stop there a little bit because I think that's a really good time to talk about market value.
Okay.
Right? So market value is a sort of an interesting term, and I often say to my clients, market value is what a willing and able buyer will pay for a property.
Without a doubt.
And that the market doesn't lie. So is that how you explain market value? What's your definition?
Yeah, often, because the buyers will tell you, you know, sometimes without telling you, right? Not a verbal cue, that a home could be overpriced or a home could be underpriced. You never really know, or right on the spot. And it's definitely market value has to do with what's happening as we speak. So it's always a moving target. You could price a home, you know, today, but you have to have that caveat that that can change depending on, you know, what other homes are selling for, depending on consumer confidence, depending on mortgage interest rates, right? So there's all of these other factors that would play into.
So market value is a moving target.
Yeah, I love that.
And oftentimes you can tell if something is not market value if it's priced way above, because it won't, in this market, won't sell right away.
Potentially, yeah.
So you have a pretty good idea that what market value is by the interest and offers that you're going to receive.
That's for sure. And we often look at when we're determining market value, we're helping to maybe, I like to say, bracket the market value or suggestions to the home seller is, you know, we're really looking on that location, the lot usability, the home floor plan usability, the square footage, and the amenities that home may have.
The condition of the home.
Absolutely.
So upgraded bathrooms and kitchens and things.
Without a doubt.
So in this situation, you already were thinking, we might be a little high. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you said it went. So go ahead. It went over, right?
It did.
So what was the story?
So we listed the home on a Friday strategically, knowing most people would have, you know, off on the weekends and the home would be more available. Those homeowners headed down to their beach house.
Right.
So it really left the home nicely exposed for showings anytime, which was really great.
So go and show.
Go and show, yeah, which is the best, because all it takes is one decline of an appointment. Those buyers saw something else and not our home and chose that instead of ours. So it was the best possibility around. So, you know, my phone was blowing up all weekend, and it was welcomed.
Yes.
So yeah, it was interesting. We listed the home on a Friday, had the first showing that same evening, and then all throughout the weekend, you know, it was, the agents were at it, showing the property. It was really fantastic.
Did you set a time for offers, or is that something that you do case by case?
Yeah, case by case, and usually as you know, as the weekend might unfold, if that's the strategy we've employed.
That's what I like to do.
Yeah, you never want to be too confident.
Right. So you waited to see what kind of offers might have come in.
Exactly. Although it's good to have that, you know, conversation up front with the homeowner. I might be calling you this weekend, and we might need to, if it sounds good to you, you know, implement this strategy of perhaps setting a deadline.
Right. And it gives agents who are buyer's agents a little bit of breathing room to say, okay, let's get all our ducks in a row to make sure that we're making, as a buyer agent, I appreciate that. If it looks like there's going to be more than one offer.
Exactly. Although when the first offer rolled in from the first showing, we said, oh, okay, hang tight.
Yep.
Maybe we need to get this going.
Act, because it was really good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and do something. So throughout the course of that weekend and into that Monday, we did set a deadline in there. And then I think while it was all over, I believe we got about 9 offers on that home. And that one offer that had come in that Friday, we, throughout the weekend, that agent was keeping in communication and had revised with her buyer's permission and, with talks between them, revised that offer, and some others had done the same. So always keeping track of those, we do it in a nice spreadsheet manner, which is helpful for all parties.
Right.
So yeah, at the end of that kind of 3 to 4 day time frame, there was nice pickings, basically.
And she revised because she had the information that there were other offers.
Exactly.
She had no idea what those other offers were, or the buyers didn't. But they started to think about, how much do we really want this house? How do we want those terms to come in in the best position?
Well said, Claire.
Okay.
Yeah, a few of the other agents and buyers revised, but not all did.
Okay.
And not all were so communicative.
Okay.
So
out of the gate, she was on it.
Out of the gate.
They're buyers. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then
pretty awesome.
They ended up taking their offer.
They did.
And the offer was?
Right. So we think back to what it was, the original asking price, which was that $619,000 or $620,000. And the winning bid came in at $680,000.
Come on.
Yeah. $680,000, and that wasn't...
So 60 over.
60 over asking, and that wasn't the only highest offer. There was another one that just about matched that. Yeah, and so with that, though, there were some other, I'd say, pretty lucrative terms. No offers were cash, so we compared financing to financing to financing. So it was on the same playing field, which was nice. But in this instance, those buyers paid full transfer tax. Usually, customarily, I'll say, it's split, the transfer tax, equally.
So municipality has transfer tax. So depending on where you live. So if you live in Tredyffrin, it's 1%, I think.
A little higher.
1.25%.
Yeah.
And 1.25% for the buyer and the seller. So to make their offer a little attractive, they said, we're going to pay both sides of the transfer tax.
Exactly. And in this instance, it came to just about $10,000 that they were willing to take on versus roughly $5,000.
Okay.
Without increasing the price, which was pretty attractive
which
as well.
Which is important because that doesn't get counted against for appraisal.
Exactly,
right?
Which is part of our topic today.
Okay, so maybe we'll move there. Are we ready to move into that? What happened with the appraisal?
I think so.
Because right, so they offered, they accepted, waived inspections.
And great question, they did an inspection deductible, and that really means, it's interesting because our offers or our contracts maybe 15 years ago used to read with this deductible, and then over time it's been worked out, and we're now seeing this language come back to play again.
So interesting with the market. Yep.
Exactly, where the buyers are willing to take on a certain amount of dollar costs of repairs up front, but if something, grave comes in over and above X amount, in this case it was $5,000.
They could have an out.
Exactly.
But even if something came in, came in at $5,500, but they could still say, oh, we're still going to stick.
Yeah,
but it just gave them an out of the contract. And for the sellers, it was a little risky because they still had to go through inspection period.
Yeah, and they were okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, they were okay. They
with 60,000 more, I would think that would be
worth it. There was some play in there, right?
Yeah,
there was some play.
Okay.
And I guess lastly, before we get to the appraisal piece, speaking of that, they also built in what we call an appraisal gap, or what we've coined it to be an appraisal gap term that has been added, by us agents into or onto the appraisal contingency addendum. And what that states is kind of upfront negotiations are happening, whereas we could say that buyer X is willing to cover X amount of any difference of appraisal versus agreed upon purchase price.
Okay, so in this case, the agreed upon purchase price was $680,000. the asking price was $620.
Correct.
So that's $60,000 is a $60,000 appraisal gap.
And already with a home where the highest comp in that area was around the 580.
Yeah, so we were
590.
expecting there possibly. So let's dig into what appraisal is. So appraisal is an independent professional who comes in and works for the financing, right? And they need to give their professional opinion on what the home is worth.
Exactly. It's a third party, unbiased, data-driven, as you said, type of opinion at present period of time.
And why would a mortgage, well, I know the answer, but the mortgage company wants an appraisal because they don't want to finance something that's not worth that.
You know it.
So
they want to protect their own interests.
Right. So that's where that comes in. And so that's what appraisal, why we're seeing this right now is some homes are not appraising, but buyers are still willing to take that risk, even though they get into it at a point where it might not be worth it.
For sure.
However, the market value is telling them that it is worth it at this point.
Yeah. And to be bold enough to insert that appraisal gap into the offer was very attractive for these home sellers because when that language is not in the agreement of sale, if the home underappraises, a buyer can quickly terminate.
Right.
And this way we had some built-in play.
So you negotiated that up front. The seller knew, okay, the buyers are willing to take some appraisal and up to up to 680. So if it appraised anywhere between 620 and 680, they were
good.
They were good to cover that cost. If it appraised less than 620, it gave them an out in the contract, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily had to get out of the contract.
Yeah, perhaps we could have renegotiated if it happened to come in for under 620.
Okay, so where did the appraisal come in?
Great question. So, well, prior to that, knowing that we had this appraisal gap clause in there and knowing we were what seemed to be so far in advance of the market data with purchase price, it's best if, you do your homework and be prepared for when the appraisal does happen. So by printing, all of the offers, clipping them nice, neatly, and having those offers ready on the table for when the appraiser came out.
So you met the appraiser. Oftentimes, some agents do, some don't always, but you were there and you said, look,
exactly.
Here are these offers, 9 of them.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong with that,
right.
Especially in this situation where I knew we were so far above. For us, that was the best case scenario to definitely meet the appraiser eye to eye, have that conversation with him or her, show them what the market is doing, and show them that this wasn't the only offer that came in at this price point. That to me speaks volumes, right? You're seeing that in person.
And in real time.
Real time.
Yep.
Yeah, real time. Ensuring that you're speaking to the property, perhaps the appraiser, he or she doesn't actually see something in particular that would help value.
Yeah.
In this case, the homeowners had done some leveling of the back lot, with like excavation to make it much more usable, so he or she wouldn't have seen
and that outside patio space may have come in, you might not have picked that up.
Wanted just to be certain he or she saw all of those particulars of said subject property, we'll call it.
Okay.
And so with that being said, the appraisal, met the appraiser, and then a week or two goes by, value comes back, we hear from the buyer's agent. It appraises for around $640,000.
Oh, wow. So
not 680.
Right. But not below 620.
Not below 620. And since that clause was already built into the contract, that buyers would, make up about, I think it was $60,000 worth of difference, we were right in that realm, and buyers ended up making up $40,000 of the difference. Not that they paid more.
Right.
But it turned out.
So they had to, so the loan stayed the same, so the appraiser, in terms of the bank and the mortgage, the loan stayed the same, but then they weren't paying more for the house. They're going to pay $680, but they had to come up with a little bit more cash beforehand.
Correct.
For their down payment money.
Yes, so their down payment, was this, and now it went up a little bit.
Yep.
But we had vetted it out to ensure that, the proper documentation came over, noting that they would have that before we committed to, agreeing to that appraisal gap.
And expectations were set on both sides.
They really were, and it was just such a great thing to have that expectation up front. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So then the rest went swimmingly.
Yeah,
right? Once
for
you
the
got
most
through
part.
that.
For the most part, little things here and there, but that was one of the biggest pieces.
Okay.
Or one of the biggest milestones, as I like to call it, for this particular transaction. And once we got past that point, it was, just smooth sailing from
You and I
there.
talked a little bit about this beforehand, about being, if you are the buyer or the buyer's agent and you get into a situation where you're making up that difference, even though you have set that expectation, is there any pause? Do you have pause? I know, we kind of talked a little bit about this for making sure buyers truly understand what that entails and means. And you mentioned, and I'll let you do it again, but that you think that by setting those expectations up front really does ease that.
Without a doubt. And it doesn't always work that way.
Right,
Those clauses aren't always built into contracts. Sometimes the buyer doesn't feel comfortable with that.
Right.
They want it to appraise for sales price or higher.
Right.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Right. And I've done that too, built it in like that. We've made a couple offers in the last couple weeks where they were not willing to go more than what they were, or below what the asking was.
And in this case, they weren't, only willing, they were able.
Yep.
They had that cash
that's
aside.
a good point.
So
Great point.
two different things.
And everyone's different, a little bit different, but it's important that all the parties have a good understanding of what all that means.
Yeah, that was great to have those conversations up front.
Good.
Yeah, because it can kind of muddy the water when you're in it, emotions high.
Right. And you're in a contract.
In the contract, there's time's a ticking, and to think about some of that.
Has this closed?
Oh, it has.
Okay, so.
Oh, yeah, everybody was thrilled.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So there's one piece here that gets oftentimes included in conversations about market value and appraisal, which is assessment. So I'm going to let you go into assessment because I think you have a really nice way
of thank you.
What assessment actually means and how it affects our deals.
Well, I think it's interesting because appraisal and assessment, they both start with A's, and they have some double letters in them.
Totally.
That often people interchange them.
Right.
It's consumers and agents alike.
Right.
And market value and how they can all differ. Right.
Right.
We talked a little bit about the independent appraisal.
Right.
Which sounds a lot similar to market value, but I'll jump back to that. But the assessed value of a home is how we determine real estate taxes. Well, not we, but the taxing authorities, right?
And municipalities and county and
so we have 3 real estate taxes. Well, we call real estate tax in our area. We have the municipal, as you said, Claire. We have that's the township. We have the county, and we have the school in most areas here. Excuse me. So the assessed value happens at some point in time. So in Delaware County, for example, those assessed values have recently been reassessed, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the assessment in Delaware County, let's say, as to where this property was as well, in that county, the assessment hasn't been done since maybe 1999 or 2000. So we're taking old assessed values to equal current day taxes. And for some people, that they're thrilled, right? Because the assessed values hadn't caught up to current market value.
Right. So with the reassessment happening in Delaware County right now, for sure, the goal is to assess at the closest as possible to market value to make a fair playing field for all taxpayers.
Exactly, and that's the attempt. And some folks taxes will have gone up because of such, and some may go down because of such, and some stay the same. But there's been certain areas in our county, in Delaware County, I'll say, where the values haven't climbed, but taxes have.
Right.
And then other areas, conversely, the values have skyrocketed.
Right, and the taxes have stayed low.
Right.
So we're seeing a little bit of some leveling out in tax and in assessment. So that's what assessment means. And who does the assessment?
Yeah, well, in this instance that just happened, it was a third-party company that the county hired.
Right.
I believe it was Tyler Technologies
Yes.
to help, and it was a massive project and undertaking.
Yeah. It still is ongoing.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
With appeals and
Right.
whatnot. But usually, the municipality and the county and the schools do their budgets every year.
Right.
And once they, work through their budgets, they put out something called a millage rate. And that millage rate is used to multiply by the assessed value of said property, which then equals the real estate taxes.
And that's what we're waiting for right now. We've seen county and township, but we're waiting for school taxes, right? Which usually come out in the end of the summer.
Exactly.
And we'll see how your assessment affects those taxes. Is that jive with what you were thinking, right?
Sure does.
Aisha, we actually have done a whole show.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And we need to kind of think about what we just did. And I'm so excited that we were able to kind of talk about a few of those things. And that sounds like a really interesting story. And I'm sure it's not the only one out there like that. So I'm glad that we were able to have some time to talk about it and talk about appraisal differences and offers and buyers and sellers and kind of thinking about listing in this market. Or not, right? So thanks for meeting with me and doing this together. Aisha and I are going to do this again, and we're going to bring you all kinds of different topics, right?
Yeah, around real estate.
Around real estate,
Yeah.
yes. So we'll be thinking about our next one.
Yeah, might see us on the streets in your neighborhood.
Yeah, right. So it's great being here with you, and that was fun.
As always. Thanks, Claire.
No, thank you.
My pleasure.